What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Trade Targets here on the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Got kind of a quick video for you guys here today because, quite frankly, the studs were studs and the duds were duds this week. But there were a couple outliers here and there. I got 2 buy lows, 2 sell highs, and even an honorable mention for you here today. So let's get right on into it. Our first buy low of the day is going to be Noah Fant, tight end for the Denver Broncos. This week he went 3 receptions on 7 targets for only 38 yards. So nothing really special coming from Noah Fant aside from the first couple of weeks of the season. But this offense is so hobbled right now. Drew Lock is not playing like we've seen Drew Lock can play. But he remains heavily involved. Noah Fant is arguably the go-to guy on this offense, no matter who's at center, but especially for Drew Lock. He's got very high usage for a tight end. He's seen 6+ targets in, I think, all but 1 game this season. And that 1 game was, I believe, week 2 when he still popped off and had a touchdown and was perfectly fine at the tight end position. But with Noah Fant, the reason why I'm highlighting him as a buy low is because recency bias is here with him. He's had 3 weeks in a row where he had a bye week, he had an injury, and then he came out and put up 6.8 PPR points this week, which is obviously disappointing. But he really is a good tight end to go after. He's got top 10 upside pretty much every single week. He's a very safe option because, like I said, he's getting 6+ targets pretty much every single game, which for the tight end position, that's really all you could ask for. And then you pair the fact that Noah Fant is actually a competent and good tight end getting those targets. It's only a matter of time before he reminds everyone what we were buying into at the start of the season and what we saw over the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season from him. I have no doubt that Noah Fant is going to start finding the end zone again. And I think it's going to happen as soon as this weekend. So I would go out and buy low on Noah Fant while you still can. I know in one of my leagues, I saw someone pay recently. We do draft pick trading because it's a keeper league. I think somebody traded like a 6th or a 7th round pick for Noah Fant. Really nothing absurd, especially since the draft is only 12 rounds each year. But yeah, Noah Fant, great buy low candidate right now. If you were needy at the tight end position, highly would recommend going out and seeing what the price on him would be in your league. First sell high for you that I have today is going to be Baker Mayfield, and this should come to a surprise to absolutely nobody. I mean, he tore it up. He was a few yards shy of 300 yards. He had 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. He was one of fantasy's highest scoring quarterbacks of the week. But it's Baker Mayfield. There are so many people that rush to the waiver wire to get him and so many people that really want him right now. If you have him or you happen to pick him up on your waiver wire, turn around and sell him immediately because Odell Beckham is out for the year. Austin Hooper is not healthy. Nick Chubb is still out. I mean, granted, he should be back soon, but nonetheless, get rid of Baker Mayfield. If you're getting any value for him whatsoever, if people are buying into the hype after 1 successful game, let them buy into it and you should go and reap the rewards because as you've seen, the first 6 weeks of the season, Baker Mayfield did absolutely nothing. He has looked awful and not good whatsoever. And even I don't even know. I don't know what the appeal is behind Baker Mayfield besides this 1 game. And seriously, go on Twitter, type in Baker Mayfield's name, and everyone has done a complete 180 on him, just completely throwing out what we saw over the first 6 weeks of the season. People are also saying, oh, well, what if it's Odell Beckham's fault? What if Baker Mayfield's just so much better without OBJ? I don't understand where that comes from either because OBJ, at the very least, when he's on the field, he's going to open up the field for the other guys. So I don't really understand where that logic is coming from. I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to be better with Odell Beckham or without Odell Beckham. I just think he had a good game against a piss-poor Cincinnati Bengals defense. So to anyone that's overreacting and saying Baker Mayfield's back and he is a top 10 quarterback moving forward in fantasy and yada, 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 sell Baker Mayfield. Get whatever you can for him. He is, if you can get anything for him, that's selling high because he had literally 0 value last week. He was being dropped everywhere. As you can tell, I'm very passionate on selling high on Baker Mayfield. So go out there, make me happy, get him off your team. My second and final buy low of the day is going to be Jarvis Landry. Now, I was just talking a whole lot of smack on Baker Mayfield, but I'm not going to talk smack on Jarvis Landry. So this past week, he was only targeted 6 times, but he did catch 5 of them for 48 yards. He even had a pass for, I believe, 18 yards or so. We're starting to see a passing floor with Jarvis Landry every week, and always nice added bonus to get those from a receiver. But in all seriousness, I do really like Jarvis Landry moving forward. With OBJ out, he is going to factor in as the wide receiver 1 on this team. I know people are hyped over Donovan Peoples-Jones and over Rashard Higgins right now, but Jarvis Landry is still there, and literally all of us are completely ignoring him. You know, if you look at Jarvis Landry last year, he completely showed up and completely showed out over the second half of last season. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see that sort of trend happen again this year. I mean, all the stars are starting to line up. He's getting healthier. OBJ's out. Maybe Baker Mayfield is back. Maybe I'm wrong. But even if Baker Mayfield isn't back and he's still only throwing for 200 to 225 yards a week, you got to figure at least a decent chunk of that is going to go to Jarvis Landry, because he is going to factor in as the wide receiver 1 on this offense right now. Even if he's still taking a lot of snaps out of the slot, he's still going to be the de facto wide receiver 1, because he is the most talented receiver on this team. And I'm going out. I'm getting Jarvis Landry wherever I can. If you look at what he's done so far this season, it really is nothing. And this is probably the lowest Jarvis Landry's value in fantasy has been for as long as I can think of. To be completely honest with you, I think you can get him for pennies on the dollar right now. And he has significantly more upside, in my opinion, than Peoples-Jones and Rashard Higgins. And if I can have a piece of this offense right now that OBJ is out of it, but yeah, I would take the shot on Jarvis Landry. I'm not saying he's going to be able to slot in immediately as a wide receiver 2 or even as a flex option on your roster. But due to the high potential and the low cost, I think he's every bit worth whatever you're going to do to get him on your team. So the last buy low that I have for you guys today is going to be Christian Kirk, wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. This week, he had 8 targets, caught 5 of them for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, I had him as a sell high a couple weeks ago on here, simply for the fact that I don't want a guy that is competing with Andy Isabella for those home run plays. And, yeah, I'm still going to stick by that, because he caught 5 passes for 37 yards. Now, I'm not going to be one of those guys and say, hey, what happens if you take away those touchdowns? He's completely useless. I'm not going to say that. But what I am saying is that Christian Kirk is one of those guys where he is heavily relying on those big plays. He's either going to need to find the end zone for you or rally off a 65, 70-yard reception at some point in the game for him to return any real value. I'm not going to put my eggs in that basket. As far as I'm concerned, Christian Kirk is like the equivalent of Darius Slayton right now. He's either going to go way off or he is going to bust and ruin your week, and that's just not something that I want on my team. So Christian Kirk has back-to-back performances of 20 or more fantasy points in PPR leagues, but he's still like the third option at best for Kyler Murray in that offense. Not to mention now that Chase Edmonds has taken over, which thank God Chase Edmonds is here. Let's go. But now that Chase Edmonds is there, I mean, you could argue that Christian Kirk is going to be even less involved now, because Edmonds is going to be more of a presence. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is still there. Larry Fitzgerald has actually showed up and looked pretty damn good the last couple of weeks as well. Plus, on top of it, Christian Kirk is doing battle with Andy Isabella pretty much on a weekly basis for those long home run hitting plays. And it's just not something that I personally want to be a part of. I was not drafting Christian Kirk anywhere coming into this season. I did not pick him up anywhere on the waivers over the last couple of weeks. And if you happen to draft him or you did happen to pick him up on waivers, it's the perfect time to sell. As I've mentioned in other videos, once a guy goes off like this and it's not really an every week thing, or it's not really in the wheelhouse of being an every week thing, it's the perfect time to sell. There are so many people out there that are hype on Christian Kirk right now, especially because of the last 2 games. And with the fact with how well Kyler Murray is playing, I mean, he's probably the MVP frontrunner now, especially after Arizona just took down Seattle last weekend. But nonetheless, Christian Kirk, he's a great sell high candidate. If you're fine with playing with a guy that's going to either boom that hard or bust that hard on an every week basis, by all means, you do you. I personally am risk averse when it comes to starting these kinds of guys in my lineup. And unless Christian Kirk is going against a team like Seattle or Dallas or Atlanta, a team whose secondary has basically been non-existent, I would never actually start him in my lineup. So for what that's worth, Christian Kirk to me is a weekly boomer bust option that you should try and sell off your team immediately. So I got one more for you guys today, and it is the honorable mention that I had talked about earlier in the video, and it's actually a sell high honorable mention. It's going to be Boston Scott of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the reason why I'm calling him an honorable mention is because his value is useless if Miles Sanders is announced to come back this Sunday against Dallas. Now, if you can capitalize to the Miles Sanders owner and get some have him pay for Boston Scott, maybe just as insurance, it's definitely something that I would look into. Boston Scott's going to have a good week against Dallas if he fills in for Miles Sanders. And whoever the Miles Sanders owner is in your league is absolutely crazy if he doesn't want that type of insurance on his team. Now, another situation is if Sanders is ruled out ahead of the Sunday night game, there's bound to be at least 6 or 7 guys in your league that could use Boston Scott against Dallas this weekend. And there's only, 6 weeks left in the regular season for fantasy, I believe, in most leagues. So many people, this is when the wins are really starting to count. Every single win gets you a little bit closer to that playoff spot. Boston Scott is in a potential blow-up spot against Dallas. If you don't need him or you are just not a believer in using Boston Scott against Dallas if Miles Sanders is out, put him on the trade block. See who wants to buy themselves a win this week. Because I guarantee you, if you can either get in touch with the Miles Sanders owner or if Miles Sanders is ruled out ahead of Sunday, someone's going to want Boston Scott on their team. Maybe you want to keep him. Maybe you desperately need that win and you're low on running backs. Hey, that's fine too. That's great. But I think you should at least let everyone know in your league that Boston Scott is sitting on your trade block and remind them of the super easy matchup he's going to have this weekend if Miles Sanders sits. So that's going to do it for me here today on the Fantasy Stock Exchange. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Trade Targets. I know it was kind of a short one since we only had 2 buy lows and 2 sell highs, but hey, at least I got an honorable mention in there for you guys. If you are not subscribed already to the channel, feel free to do that below. Also, be sure to like and comment. And of course, follow me and Fantasy Stock Exchange on Twitter. You want to see some funny tweets, I'm always tweeting out on Sundays whenever football's going on. Every time my fantasy football team is messing up, I let the world know that they are messing up and messing me up. But with that being said, I will catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in here on the Fantasy Stock Exchange.